Welcome back to Mind the Gap. Today, we're digging deep, literally, into the world of mining, an industry often seen as a slow-moving giant when it comes to innovation. But is that really the case? Imagine mining as a massive cargo ship. It takes time to change course, but when it does, the momentum is unstoppable. So guys, I like frameworks, and just for this episode, I kind of want to just break down some of the things that will, uncover like the biggest barriers to technological adoption and how sustainability is reshaping operations. We'll also explore why mining companies tend to value relationships over rivalry and what it would take for industry leaders to embrace a more pioneering mindset. Plus, in this episode, we'll also talk about how membrane technology is making waves in resource recovery and why diversifying investments might just be the key to long-term resilience. Joining me today are two brilliant engineers who've seen these challenges and opportunities firsthand. So, buckle up, guys, because we're about to strike gold in the world of mining innovation. Welcome to the show, Thomas and Daniel.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us, Kieran.
How are you guys doing? It's great to have you on.
Good. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I'm very excited for what we'll be covering today because I looked at the brief and I thought, shucks, like how much can I really know about this? I know you guys are going to throw me some lemons, so I'm ready for catching them and making some lemonade. But in this case, it's going to be really sweet getting into the details of it.
Yep.
So one of the things that we've kind of spoken about previously on the show before is that mining has a bit of a reputation for being slow to adopt new technology. What are the biggest barriers to innovation and how can they be overcome within this industry?
So I think mining is a very slow industry. Traditionally, it's got that characteristic about it, and I think it's due to really the size and scope of the projects. I mean, these are huge capital projects, billions of dollars, and they take years to get off the ground. I think you look at a project from maybe start to finish, 20 years probably until they start producing. It's probably a typical time frame for what mines go through to get their projects up and off the ground, and they start right at the beginning with their process design, with getting capital, and everything is based around that. So to try and change that during the process with the risk that it adds is a real concern for a lot of the mines. And I think that's one of the drawbacks. Once they've invested the huge capitals, they've got to get the return for that. Can't be changing too often and introducing new risk through the process. And I think that's one of the main challenges around innovation in the mining industry.
So commitment's a big thing when it comes to mining. I would say that you've got to see a process through before you can agilely make any sorts of adjustments. Is that a way of putting it?
Yeah, that's a really good way to summarize it. If you come in with a technology that is new and innovative and actually is beneficial and saves them money or makes the process more efficient, it's fantastic. But they're on that train track. They can't quickly turn a train. It has to curve slowly. So yeah, exactly. If you come in with a technology that's disruptive in a sense, or that can save them lots of money, they're less inclined to take it on. If you go onto a greenfields build, for example, greenfields meaning a brand new mine that's being set up and going through all the stages of development, it's easier in that regard to get a new technology. But to try and get new technology or innovation or changes into an existing setup is very difficult.
I think with both of you being chemical engineers, you have, I think, the outside perspective of the technical nuts and bolts, but then also kind of the business consultancy sort of view on mining. Was stepping from a chemical engineering background into mining a natural step? Were there some expectations that were changed by what you found going into the mining world?
So yeah, the mining world is quite different. Studied chemical engineering, initially enjoying the petrochem side,
Right.
thinking that's where the money is. But I think that's changed, and we'll get into some of the sustainability discussions a little bit later. But mining is really where the excitement is, the big projects, the challenges really to make those operations run efficiently. That's where the excitement is, and moving into that industry, it's a bit of a change. The engineering background helps a lot. It's really the way you think.
Yeah.
So I got thrown in, didn't study metallurgical engineering, but basically been doing metallurgical engineering throughout my almost 15-year career now.
Sure.
And it's the concepts, it's the processes that you learn. It's all about optimization, making the process right.
Yeah.
That's the key for the chemical engineering side. And you can put that into any industry. I mean, chemical engineers go into banking, into investments,
100%.
to risk management. So it's really the processes that you can apply to different industries.
Because it is, I suppose, from a philosophical point of view, a very process-orientated way of viewing the world, right?
Yes.
As an outsider, my interpretation of chemical engineering is looking at reactions.
Yeah.
Right? You're looking at what comes together to make an outcome. In your case, it might be an explosive outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, look,
Literally.
I think I need a little drum kit on this show. The amount of wordplay
Drum
I'm
it in
doing
the
at the
side.
moment.
But I mean, that is usually the perception of chemical engineering. People say, "So do you mix chemicals all day?" No, I don't. So we've got that basis, like Dan is saying. You have that understanding of how processes should work, but how it unpacks and how it unfolds. That's really what makes you the engineer.
Right.
So you mentioned, how do we pivot from chemical engineering into mining, or even into understanding the commercial value?
Yeah.
A lot of these processes won't run unless it makes sense financially.
100%.
It comes down to the rands and the cents. So you have to have a very good handle over the technical, but you also have to have a very good handle over the financial and how it plays out. This thing can be fantastic, but without the commercial viability, you've got nowhere. So you have to understand both of these things.
So green and sustainable has been quite a controversial topic within, the financial space and planning space of businesses, particularly, I think, when it comes to the mining world. I think that's something that is a big conversation that's on the table and has seen quite a bit of adoption. How are you guys finding it within your realms?
Look, I definitely see, and Dan can chat about it as well, but I definitely see a big drive towards it. And what's interesting is the value that is associated with sustainability and going green. So in the past, and I come from the water treatment industry, and heading more into the mining space as well. But definitely for the water treatment industry, there was always a value that water had. And unfortunately, that value is very low. So in order for me to treat the water to reuse it, that's quite expensive. So what's happened in the past is we just take fresh water, drinking water, and we use it to wash floors. It doesn't make sense. No. But the reason that it makes sense to keep doing that is because financially there's no gain in treating that water.
Yeah.
Now there is a higher value on water, not only from a sustainability perspective, but also being able to have the availability. So companies out there, and we're seeing it more and more even in the mining space, is there enough water to keep in operational, to keep the mine in production? And often the answer is no. So now they have to start looking into different ways for treating that water or getting a source.
Right.
And that's where that value pivots, because previously it was water's cheap, just chuck it down the drain.
Yeah.
We don't care about
It's already clean, so whatever we
exactly
use it on, I mean, I suppose that's a whole topic on its own.
For
using grey water.
No, for sure. That's a whole thing on its own. But the concept of before, it had very little value because the consideration to the environment was less. It was, we've just got tons of water, just chuck it down the drain. Or, if it's not exactly on spec, it should be fine. Whereas now the value of ESG and the value of sustainability and thinking green is definitely pushing up. There's a lot of sort of laws and policies that are being put in place to make sure that guys are not polluting the environment and not just chucking these things away. Yeah.
Explain ESG for me.
ESG, it is environmental social governance.
Right.
So again, it's looking at the whole picture of your company. So maybe your product itself is environmentally sustainable.
Right.
But what goes into your system and what goes out of your system, is that environmentally sustainable? So how much water are you using? How much chemicals are you using? And once you've made your product, maybe that's sustainable, but what are your outputs? What happens to the waste? You have to look at the entire thing.
Because from a governance perspective, you've got communities around the mines to consider. You've got locally environment, biodiversity, everything that comes into the discussion around that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, ESG is all about the impact that you have on the world, on the people, on the environments, and making sure that what you do is ultimately sustainable, ultimately in everyone's best interest.
Yeah.
That the impact you make is as little as possible, or as positive as possible, rather.
So what technologies are you seeing coming in and making the most impact, both in this realm and I think in mining in general?
So it's the mining industry, as we were discussing earlier, is very slow to adopt. There's fundamental changes in macroeconomic outlooks, which are influencing the mining industry significantly. If you think now about the global energy transition, working towards getting away from fossil fuels,
Yeah.
towards greener chemicals, and really greener solutions. Really, battery technology is the main one, but there's others, fuel cell technology. So there's a lot of different initiatives being pushed on the mining industry, let me say it like that, that require the mining industry to change the way that they do it.
Yeah.
If you look maybe at Tesla, for example, with the gigafactories and BYD, the gigafactories that they're building now, that's all from a sustainability, CO2 emissions, making it sustainable from a global point of view. That's really being pushed back onto the mining industry, saying, cool, we need these minerals, we need your cobalt, we need your nickel, we need your manganese to be able to build those batteries. But the likes of Tesla, for example, take into account the impacts that mining those chemicals and mining those minerals has actually at the end of the day. And they want those supply chains to be as beneficial as possible.
100%.
So that's forcing the mining industry to really look at how they're manufacturing and how they're mining in the most environmentally friendly way possible, to be able to fulfill Tesla's marketing goals and their dreams that their product is green and good for the environment. So from that point of view, being pushed into the mining industry, how we need to do business.
Right, right. I mean, I think mining companies often rely on strong relationships rather than competition. Collaboration or comparison is quite important. How does this dynamic impact the pace of technological adoption within the mining business and mining businesses?
So I think it depends which mineral you're looking at. PGM guys seem to be a lot more closed in terms of their technology, and they all have different processing routes or refining routes. But for the majority of minerals, the industry is very open, as you say. There's a lot of collaboration, a lot of sharing of information. And I think it comes down to a couple of factors. I think the main factor is that everyone gets paid the same for their gold. So there's no differentiation in terms of the gold that you produce. You get the same no matter which mine it is. Copper, you get the same no matter who's producing it, you get the same revenue for it. And that fosters, I think, that culture of working together. The mining industry, it's a huge industry, massive mines, but yet it's small as well. I mean, the people involved move from one operation to the next operation quite a lot. Maybe a bit incestuous in a way.
It's quite a lot of cross-pollination of talent.
Cross-pollination, absolutely. And from a supply side, from a supply point of view, we obviously supply to all the mines, the majority of the mines, and we see what's happening at each of the different mines.
Right.
And it's usually the suppliers, the service providers, which are pushing the technology and looking at commercializing the innovations rather than the other way around.
So we were recently actually in Namibia, and following your cross-pollination analogy, it dawned on me that suppliers, technical suppliers, are acting as the bee in that analogy. And you've got one flower here, mine A, and us, which is the bee, and then going to mine B. And you actually start seeing, hey, listen, these are the technologies that we can provide. They ask, where else has this been used? And you can say, well, it's been used here and here. And then they adopt that. And that's the whole thing is they're looking for best practice. Yeah. So, okay, cool. So these guys are doing it. our system, our circuit seems to be working along the same lines. Maybe we can tweak here and there, you know. And it's not this competition as in secrecy, and we're not going to tell you how we do it because it's kind of fundamental stuff that follows. So yeah.
It's raising the standards of best practice. I think that's more or less what you said there. And
And I mean, there's even instances you could maybe share on where they pool resources. Literally, these competing mines pool resources to say, well, I need 50,000 tons of chemical, of this specific chemical, but we don't want to bring in 100,000 tons because it's cheaper. So can we split the shipment? I mean, maybe you can talk into that a bit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all about being the most efficient, and you can do that with collaboration much more than trying to do it by yourself. So the mining industry, let me look at an example for you. We supply products up into the DRC. It's a revolutionary coagulant, and there was a lot of hesitancy in the beginning, as you're saying, to new technology. Guys have been trying to get this right in the industry for maybe 30 years. And it took one mine to actually get that right. And they were having severe issues. So their copper production was sort of down 20%. It was when a few years ago when the copper price was very low, and they were probably going to put the mine on care and maintenance.
yeah.
We managed to get this product to be used by the mine. They said, yes, let's try it. They didn't really have much alternatives or many other options. And it dramatically changed their performance. They increased their revenue by 20%, which is massive.
That is huge, yeah.
Yeah. But it came back to the risk that they were once wanting to take in the beginning. The risk for those guys, if something goes wrong, if they lose a day of production, it's millions of dollars. It's a huge commitment to make, to save. Maybe you can save $10 million, but in the process, you might lose $20 million if something goes wrong. So it's a risk point of view. But once it was incorporated at the one mine, it took off in the industry.
Yeah.
Guys moved to different sites, said, yes, we've tried this there. The guys from other mines said, yeah, they want to see it. Came across to this mine, had a look. The guys are open. They invite others to come and look what we've done, publish papers on it. We presented papers with the specific mine, detailing the technology and what was done for them. So in scholastic circles, the guys all knew about it. So really a lot of collaboration, and now that product has fundamentally changed the copper-belt industry, really.
Oh, that's amazing. I think unlike other industries where, for example, like marketing, where sometimes you can, build the plane and fly it, in the mining world, you have to build the plane before it's flown. And I think there's a delay in adoption. There's always the second to be first mindset, which, suggests that hesitation in taking those risks and being the first one to adopt a new technology or a new process or anything like that. What would it take for mining leaders to shift towards a more proactive approach in this sort of aspect?
I definitely think you have to break through the hesitancy. And what we've seen in the last couple of years is there's been, and excuse the phrase, there's been some old toppies.
Yeah.
That, they've been there for years and years and years, and
This is how we've always done it.
This is how we've always done it, so this is how you should do it. And that's a dangerous mindset to have. Dan mentioned the scale of these projects, 20 years, let's say. So it is difficult to get in there. But just because we've done this the way that we've always done it, it doesn't mean it's the right way. So yes, you have to manage that risk in production. Okay, cool, we've got this new technology. We aim to, or we stand to gain 20% increase in production. If it goes wrong, we could lose 30% of production. And like Dan points out, that's millions of dollars in a day. So that is the hesitancy. So you need some brave individuals to do it. And often the way that we get them over the mark is to run test work for them. So you can come with as many published papers as you like, until you've got a physical sample in your hand. Proof is in the pudding.
Absolutely.
It's very difficult to convince. So we at MEMCON and even at BME Metallurgy, we push for trial work, test work. so that the client can physically see and they can analyze themselves. We're not trying to fabricate anything. They can physically see that what we say our product can do actually does.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the mining industry is changing a lot over the years. I mean, the guys want to see the results on their plants, on their process. But the mining industry over the years has changed. The ore bodies available nowadays to treat are a lot more difficult to treat, a lot lower grade than what they were 40, 50 years ago.
Is that a depth thing or a country region thing?
Yeah, I mean, all the easiest minerals have been mined first. The lowest cost ones, the easiest, most accessible, easiest to treat, they've been mined. And the world is starting to now need to mine the more difficult minerals. So they need innovative solutions to be able to do that now in a cost-effective way. And the mining industry is waking up to that. There's some really exciting companies, mining companies out there that really go with both arms to technology and really try and see what can they do to make their process more efficient. Because it's, as we were discussing, the mines are long-term.
Yeah.
A lot of the mines are 50 years, you want 70 years, 80 years. And how do you get there doing the same thing?
No.
The guys need to innovate now to be able to keep mining for the next 20, 30 years and keep producing for the next 20, 30 years.
Sure.
So that's the fundamental change that a lot of the leaders are waking up to. It's not just about hitting your targets this year. It's a long-term game.
Longevity.
That's quite incredible. And I mean, I suppose there's more of an openness to that new information, but that information isn't necessarily always accessible. I mean, like you said, it could be published in academic journals. Wow, great. But, your top guys at a mine aren't necessarily going to be keeping their thumb on that pulse. They're going to be relying on consultants as yourself to bring this technology to them, to expose it and to open up those conversations. Obviously, there's reluctance with that, but that comes with, I think, experience, like you said, many years and everything.
I mean, a recent example is that complacency. It's actually mind-blowing that you're running a massive production, a huge mine, and you haven't turned over every little stone. And it's weird in a mining, as a mining analogy, but we sat with some clients and we say, this is what's available out there, and they're like, wow, I didn't know that. And then you're like, okay, cool, I understand you're on production but this is your mineral, this is like your fundamental. Why would you not look to every single avenue to innovate and to increase and be more efficient, So, but sometimes that's it, man. They're just stuck. We need to push production. Don't talk to me. I'm too busy, And that's also another roadblock or a speed bump into innovation for sure.
Yeah, the norm is kind of set, the pace is kind of given, and even for mines as they are existing, it's like you said, if there's any delay or closing of a mine for a day, it's the risk is massive.
Yeah.
So the obstacles to continuing already are quite high to maintain a momentum, let's say, or process with a mine.
Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting thing from that aspect. In terms of, I was speaking about the plane earlier. I believe you both met on a plane, and like that's where your guys' connection came from. So
not quite.
Nice.
It was actually at a conference.
Okay.
So we were both at a conference, hydrometallurgy conference. I was a presenting author, and Dan was sitting in the audience, and we chatted afterwards. That was 2019, I think. So yeah, that's kind of how we met at a technical conference.
So speak to me about some of the specifics from both your companies, so BME and Memcon. Let's talk about technologies. Let's talk about ways in which you guys are differentiating or the similarities, because we spoke about that across mines.
Yes.
I think people is a very big part of that.
So maybe start with the partnership and why the partnership works. I think a lot of the problem with innovation is that it's very scientific. It's done on paper, and this is what a doctor does in the R&D lab, comes up with a novel solution. The challenge is commercializing that and taking that actually to the end user and getting committed, getting it trialed, getting it tested. So that's one of the big drawbacks in terms of innovation within the mining industry. And there's a lot. I've read some really amazing things that are possible in the mining industry. alternatives to really hazardous products like cyanide and xanthates and things like that. Some wonderful alternatives, but actually getting it commercialized. And the partnership that we've got with Memcon's got great technology and insights on the technology itself and the membrane technology. Maybe Tom can tell you a bit more about it.
That's next on my list, actually.
So they've got that expertise. BME metallurgy, we know the market, we know the mines, we know the metallurgy, the processes, the relationships that you spoke about. We've got those relationships with a large number of mines, where we sort of trusted advisors is sort of what we'd like to call it, where we can have discussions with them and say, oh, what about this? Let's try this, and really understanding what the issues are. So if you can combine that, the technology and the development from a technology side with the market side and be able to really commercialize it, I think that's where the value lies in terms of innovation.
Yeah, so, I'll talk about what Memcon gets up to now, but exactly that the partnership that Memcon and BME Metallurgy have entered into is that it brings that technology to the end user. And the guys at BME, it's actually a member of the Omnia Group. Do you want to explain it? I don't work for BME, so maybe you should explain it.
So BME, we're a member of the Omnia Group.
Yeah.
BME is more known for explosives. Obviously, the industry knows us for explosives. We actually went through a rebranding exercise. We were called Protea Mining Chemicals, part of our chemicals division, but we focus solely on mining. We went through rebranding last year, where we now called BME Metallurgy, and then our explosive side is BME Blasting Solutions.
Okay.
And the two businesses have a lot of synergy together. We're looking at, they do the mining, we do the processing. Ultimately, it's mine to your final metal, and it's a complete value chain for the customer, and how we can optimize that and provide a overall solution to the customer. So we as BME Metallurgy look at the processing side, the reagents, the solutions, the technologies to produce more efficient, to make production more efficient. For a typical mine, the majority of the cost is spent getting the ore out the ground.
Right.
90% of the cost in some instances is actually getting that ore out the ground. Once you've spent all that money sitting on the ground, you need to extract that as efficiently as possible.
Yeah.
And that's where we come in from the metallurgy side, is making sure you're not losing anything, that you're doing that as efficiently as possible.
So yeah, that's kind of where we step in as well with Memcon. So provide membrane technology solutions to help mines be more efficient with reagents and even the likes of water. So what we did is we identified BME as a brilliant partner to be able to get this technology into market. It also helps them to stay, on the forefront of their customers' minds, and not to just supply chemicals and then walk away, but like Dan says, to get involved in their process and to guide and consult and optimize the process for them. So Memcon is a membrane technology company. So membrane technology to really butcher the concept. It's like a filter. So it's really not, it's
specialized filter.
It's way more complex than a filter, but for most people to understand, it's like a filter.
Because you're taking things from a more circular, economical perspective, right?
Yes,
And you're looking at resource recovery and recycling and
well, exactly that. So BME, they provide chemicals. Let's talk sulfuric acid. Okay, for leaching and for processing ion exchange resins and the works. What often happens is, and like we mentioned earlier, is a lot of that acid would just go down the drain. Well, the company would have to add a base to get it neutral, and then it goes down the drain. So you're losing...
Testing your scientific knowledge.
There we go.
You're losing acid, right? Which is a cost. And then you have to neutralize it, so you're adding base. And then you're also disposing of a whole lot of
raising the pH level.
That's it. So, but what we can do with membrane technology, and what is done with membrane technology, is to actually recover that acid and reuse it. So now you have less acid coming in, so that's cheaper on your production. You have to add less base to neutralize that, because you're recycling that, and you have less effluent going down the drain or into a pond or into a river, which is better for the environment.
Yeah.
So a simple technology like membrane technology enables you to do that as a mine. And it's
At which stage in the mining process is that coming in?
it's definitely on the back end.
Yeah.
So Dan mentioned, it's not on the ore extraction, it's really on the metallurgy side and more so on the hydrometallurgy side. So metallurgy can be broad strokes split into pyrometallurgy and hydrometallurgy. Pyro is still dealing with them as solids and doing a whole lot of processes with sulfur and all of that. Hydrometallurgy is once you've got the metal dissolved into a solution.
Yeah.
And then we can treat it using membrane technology. So there's a widespread applications. So we're focusing in on recovery of chemicals, but you can also pre-concentrate your metals. So you can make the existing circuits more efficient.
Yeah.
So let's say we have a dilute metal going through a process. What we can do is actually concentrate that metal so that when it goes onto the same process, it's way more efficient at extracting.
Right.
That's what we're looking at.
And I mean, we're looking at percentage differences in efficiency, and that can be millions and millions of dollars. I mean, it's such a large scope when you're looking at it in terms of the mining world. That's why these details are so important to cover.
Yeah. I mean, an example that we're having a look at an inquiry out of Zambia, there's a very dilute stream of copper that their technology as it stands, they can't extract that copper. So it's 0.5 gram per liter, let's say. They're literally throwing that away because they can't get at it.
Sure.
So what we can do is we can actually concentrate that up, and then it's strong enough for them to actually extract with their existing technology. So that's the gain, is like, okay, cool, you were throwing this away. If we concentrate it for you, now you don't have to throw it away. And you can, with not changing anything else than our technology, you can already boost your production.
Sure, that's amazing. From a out of Africa perspective, the international community for mining, it's a massive world. However, a lot of it sits here in Africa. How is this connecting and going across the world and being collaborated upon, not just within your field, but in general, I suppose?
South Africa's got a very strong mining heritage.
Yeah.
We're known throughout the world for that, and we contribute across the globe. I was in a conference now in Denver in the US, and the amounts of South Africans that were there was actually quite incredible. And they're taking the technology and the things that have been developed here across the world into various countries. BME metallurgy itself, we're in a number of countries internationally. We in Canada, where the sustainability and ESG requirements are maybe tenfold what they are here in South Africa. So you have to develop novel solutions and things like that internationally to be able to compete in those markets. So it's a very interesting market up there.
So a lot of what's being taken over there is coming from us. Is there much that's coming back from, let's say, the Canada side? I mean, there's, like you said, it's highly regulated. So is that you seeing something reflected here in South Africa or Africa abroad?
I think Africa's still fairly behind in terms of the legislation and the ESG requirements compared to what the rest of the world is, quite far behind. But we are catching up, and the technology, where it's cost effective, is having really big impacts and really big benefits for the local customers as well.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the technologies that BME's developed on an explosive side is, I suppose you think explosives are explosive, it just goes bang. But there's a lot more to it than that. What BME has developed is technology that can use recycled oil, old oil, waste oil, that traditionally would likely go down the drain in South Africa, but it's not, where there's lack of enforcement and it's not enforced properly. So what we've done is we've developed a novel process in our emulsions to be able to use that waste oil effectively. And basically what we do is blow it up and get rid of it in the explosions. So I think if you look at oil, I mean, 1 liter of oil can contaminate 1 1 million liters of water.
Yeah.
If you look at that, it's
Sits
incredible.
on the surface and it spreads, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
the nature of it.
That's a problem. So we collect about 25 million liters of used oil and use that in our process, which is about 20% of the South African used oil available in the market.
Wow.
And that's novel, something that was developed here in South Africa.
Yeah.
And it's been taken now throughout Africa internationally as well. And using that for productive purpose, coming back to the circular economy question you had earlier, using that for productive purpose and getting rid of that waste, cleaning up your streams. We're also looking at changing that chemistry totally, the emulsion chemistry, and introducing environmentally friendly products instead of your ammonium nitrates. Obviously, there are nitrates in your water because that also is not good.
Yeah.
So looking at using hydrogen peroxide for explosives, which basically turns into water.
Sure.
So really novel chemistry, which South Africans are playing a big part in as well.
Oh, amazing, guys. Commodity markets are cyclical. How can mining companies build resilience by diversifying their investments and embracing a broader range of technologies? I know we kind of touched on this in some ways.
Yeah, look, I think Dan can add a bit more to that than I can. But, if you were only mining uranium,
Yeah.
and we've seen this in the past, if you're only mining uranium and the company that, the mining company only mines uranium, when the uranium price goes down, what's going to happen to your company? Oh, it's going to go down. And we can, the concept is care and maintenance. You take this full-scale production plant, this mining plant, and now when it doesn't make financial sense, you have to lay off jobs, you have to turn all the pumps and equipment off, and there's a massive cost associated with that. So what happens is if you're only reliant on one commodity, then when the price goes down, you close your doors. Sure. Which is crazy. How are you supposed to run a business like that?
No, you can't, sure.
So you do get companies, and Dan can add more to this, you do get companies that diversify, right? So when they're hitting one peak on one commodity, let's say uranium is doing well, cobalt is at a trough, but if they own both of those commodities or they operate in both those commodities, they still can manage a decent medium and keep their doors open. But if you're relying only on one, you're not going to make it.
Working with bigger margins, I suppose, with leveraging different elements. Yeah.
And I mean, it's great if you're able to do that and if you can go across the different minerals. But within your operation too, when there's peaks, take your time, invest, innovate, make your processes as efficient as possible, and see what technologies are out there while the market is good, and implement those things so that when the price does drop off, which it does, it's very cyclical, the mining industry. When those troughs do come, you're in a position to be able to withstand them. You've implemented some novel technology to reduce costs or improve efficiencies and the like to get you through those difficult periods.
What about having an offtake agreement that is independent of the global price? Because there's some mines that do that as well, right? And they manage to stay kind of stable.
Yeah, definitely. For certain minerals, certain commodities, you're able to do that. You can have long-term offtake agreements. Uranium, for example, is one of them.
How would they do that?
So a lot of the mining industry is looking to backward integrate.
Right.
Maybe a lot of not the mining industry, they sort of forward integrate. But having the raw material supply for the battery manufacturers, for example, battery manufacturers are actually now buying mines, and they're involved in that whole process. Nuclear power corporations are now buying the uranium mines.
Sure.
So that they're able to
Keep
mine
the supply.
no matter what happens with the price. If the price spikes, they've got their own mine.
Okay.
They've smoothed out that instability in the markets.
So it doesn't matter what's happening out there. If I own the mine and it's my resource, I just keep taking it. Whether the price is going up or down, it doesn't matter. I'm managing my commodity. Do you see that? So it's quite an interesting shift. Previously is I get the copper out the ground. Who wants to buy it? Okay, cool. There's a lot of demand. The price goes up. Do you see that? Whereas if you own the mine yourself, I just take it out. I don't care what else is happening there. That's a lot more stable for the let's say, the uranium, the nuclear power plant, but it also is more sustainable for the mine to stay in operation because they know whatever they take out the ground is going to be used.
Yeah.
And that's a streamlined exercise. Yeah.
And does that have a backward effect on regulation? Or, I mean, I suppose Africa, like you said, isn't so much a strictly regulated place. But if you've got companies coming in and buying supply, is that a bit of a touchy topic?
It is.
I know. Knew it.
I think there's been a lot of consolidation in the mining industry over the years. You've got major multinationals now,
Yeah.
where they bring the world-class standards here. They operate according to what they would have to in other countries. So we are catching up from that point of view.
Yeah.
There's a lot fewer independent mines than there were maybe 50 years ago as well. So
Yeah.
that's made a big difference.
Sure, that's quite amazing, and a very interesting topic, I think, for us to sort of land on, and I think we've struck a lot of gold here. Tom, Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a fantastic topic to cover. I think we dug deeper into. Oh, geez,
Another one.
These puns are just. They're not intentional at this point. They've got a mind of their own.
Amazing.
Mind the Gap is definitely mining the puns at the moment. So, but thank you so much for joining us on this episode today. It's been a great way to dig deeper into the topic, as I've said. And I think that's important to note. If there are any comments or any other questions around this sort of content, please put it in the description. And yeah, thank you guys so much for your time. It's been great to have you on.
Thanks, Gavin.
Between the train and the platform.